Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Daily Energy Markets podcast. It is Friday, April 26th, and we got Brent crude oil trading at 89.50, up about 0.5% in this morning's trade, but getting back to that $90 mark after the sell-off, after the retreat that we saw in the wake of the Israeli-Iran face-off earlier in the month. Oil has started to creep back up to that $90 point. Let's kick off this morning with Laurie Hatayan, MENA Director, Natural Resource Governance Institute. Laurie, are we seeing the recovery of the oil price to 90, the return of the geopolitical risk premium, or are there other reasons why we're getting back to those lofty heights of $90 on Brent?
So geopolitical risks, I think, and now we're thinking about like Ukraine getting all the money to fight back Russia. That's the most important. I think for MENA, the worst has passed. And what we were all dreading or fearing has happened. And it was a very coordinated, calculated attacks, counterattacks between Iran and Israel. And that's it. So now we're back to, is Israel going to Rafah or not? And what will happen? And the US is very much now into the election mode. So that is the most important for the Americans, what they will do with the Russia case and the Israel-Palestine case. It all depends about the elections now and if Biden can win. So that is what we are seeing these days.
Daniel Rahmat, Senior Energy Security Consultant based in Tehran. Daniel, what is the aftermath of these events look like from a perspective in Tehran?
Hi, Sean. Yes, there are lots coming these days. We had a lot of issues. We had a lot of discussions. But mostly we have a very new development in Iranian's official statement about the nuclear arms capacity. IRGC, one of the IRGC commanders had an official statement that if Israelis target our nuclear facilities, we will go for having a bomb. Probably we will change our fundamental policies regarding having a bomb. That shows that Iran's maybe aggressive plan for the future, probably. That there is now a possibility for reaching a bomb, and that will very definitely increase Iran's resiliency against any military attack on you. So this is the most.
Does it feel like
development.
Was the events of earlier in the month, was it seen as obviously it started on April 1st with the attack on the Iranian consulate buildings in Damascus, and it ended, or at least it's the sort of replies. Does this feel like a stalemate? Is there a winner? How does it feel from a regional point of view? Are we back to where we were on March 31st, as if nothing had happened?
Look, both sides, Iranians and Israelis, claim a victory during this actually exchange of fire, exchange of missiles. Iranians claim that the scale of Iran's attack on Israel and the number of landed missiles on Israeli military facilities were significantly more than the Israelis' retaliation, which Iranians consider as nothing. At the same time, Israelis claim that they have shot down 99% of the Iranian projectiles. And so they call the Iranian operation as a big failure. So both sides, for their domestic uses, have reached a level of enough propaganda to say that, okay, I'm the winner of the ground. But the reality is Iran has somehow escaped the possibility of potential war with Israel. Now Iran is not at the risk of an oil war with Israel, and the level of pressure on Israel has increased, especially by Hezbollah in Lebanon. The level of Iranian oil exports, is in a record during the last 6 years, and Iranians are gaining a lot of money from oil and other things. So the sanctions are now, in practice, diffused by Iran's trade with China. Almost 95%, 100% of Iranian oil goes to China. Money comes back. In a recent statement, I heard that Iran, after almost a decade, was very successful in gaining enough money for its development plans. There are still a lot of problems, especially in energy sector and others, environment sector as well. But for the time being, Iran is in a good mood. I think so.
Max Torres, managing partner at Plata Energy. Max, as the geopolitical tensions, at least in the Middle East, sort of diffuse, maybe temporarily, but nonetheless, they do. We're seeing Brent crude oil come back up to $90 a barrel. It would appear the indications that recovering there, as has been forecast earlier in this year, that the second half of this year will be much tighter, with particularly OPEC plus supply cuts. Your thoughts on fundamentals lifting this oil price back up rather than geopolitical risk, which seemed to be holding it up previously?
Morning, Sean. Yes, fundamentals, I think, again, our economic growth. I think U.S. is, again, showing, a healthy economy. Interest rates are high. And I think basically we see U.S., pushing, in a strong mood, in the economy. I think you see, all indicators, from the economic front, Dow Jones and, many others, also Bitcoin, touching record highs. So every indicator is showing us, economic growth, and probably, a little bit of, towards the inflation also as well. So basically, I think, this price and these indicators are basically showing economic growth, especially in the U.S. I think that's, to me, that's what is pushing the price. As you said,
this one thing that isn't growing, Max, this year at least, is U.S. oil production, which also adds to the tightness.
I agree. But again, it is an election year, so it's a kind of a difficult, read of this whole situation, since it's an election year, So basically, probably some of this have been pushed by the fact that we're going to have elections very soon, and we are entering the final months of the campaign. So to me, probably by the end of the year, we're going to start seeing some signs of inflation as well. So I think there's a push also because of this elections.
Well, it's hard to see how inflation comes down when energy prices are $90 a barrel. It seems that these two things can't coexist. Laurie, you mentioned in your earlier comments that the $60 billion of new funding for the Ukrainians to fight their war, which ultimately means at least 40 billion of that 60 is not cash, it's money given to US defense contractors who provide weapons to Ukraine. And those weapons are obviously used to fight this war. Why do you think that's significant? I mean, that we've had bubbles of this war, and obviously it's been raging for 2 years now. From the point of view of the energy markets, there doesn't seem to be much impact. Do you expect this to be a game changer on that?
Look, because like the Ukrainians were waiting for this decision for I don't know how many months, and in the meantime there were all these discussions about like how desperate they were, and this is where the attacks on refineries came and on infrastructure that would have an impact on the oil prices. And this is a red line for the US, and it has been a red line in the US in the Russia Ukraine war, the same way that we sense that it is a red line even in the Middle East crisis, where you see like the Houthis, whatever they're doing, but they're not attacking tankers with oil or gas. They could have done that. Or like or any indications that the Iranians will be closing the Strait of Hormuz or something. Like all of that is definitely coordinated. So when they were desperate, they started attacking the refineries in Ukraine. And you remember there were like statements coming from the US that this is not acceptable. So, and then this now could maybe like refrain the Ukrainians from like not attacking these infrastructures, but doing another sort of thing. We don't know. I really don't know what's the details of the war. So basically that's a continuous war, and in case there is more retaliation from the Ukrainians, so then the Russians will do some dramatic moves that the Americans will sanction, again sanctioning the Russian oil sector the same way now they've done with the Iranians. Yes, maybe they will not have much impact because they keep on sanctioning, but these countries like Iran, like Russia, Venezuela have learned how to bypass the sanctions. But these are like, I guess, the fears, and this is something that the market will be looking at. But I guess like the market is becoming as well, and those like dealing with the prices, they are becoming geopolitically more sensitive and like nuanced and understanding like there is a kind
of geopolitically immune, it seems, in a way. I mean, you literally would have to drop a bomb on an oil rig in order for the oil market to react.
This is now what I think everyone is saying, and everyone is believing, that whenever there is no direct attack on supply, the prices are not going to go up, and everything else feels coordinated, orchestrated, and like controlled. That there is someone, we don't know who, there is someone who is controlling everything that is happening, because no one wants I guess an escalation worldwide that could lead to something like a third world war, because already the tensions are high between the competition that everyone is talking about between Russia, between the US and China, and all the wars that are happening here and there. And so it feels like there is chaos. It feels like there are like transitions everywhere, and it feels like you don't have wise leaders, Sean, as you're always trying to look for wise leaders. So it is a very fragile but controlled chaos and controlled fragility.
Speaking of leaders, Daniel, we saw this week, which sort of went by without too much noise, that Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi visiting Pakistan, the first time in 8 years that Iranian president has visited Pakistan. And this is only months after, or even weeks nearly, that Iran and Pakistan were exchanging missiles. Speaking of flying projectiles in the neighborhood, they exchanged a few. What is that about? What's that relationship about? And the Americans again threatening even sanctions on Pakistan for talking to Iran.
Yeah, this is one of the most funny jokes of the year, that the two countries which were on the brink of a war, and they exchanged missiles and targeted each other's territories, claiming each other for supporting terrorist groups, very immediately became close friends, and the presidents gave hug to each other, and the Iranian president went and visited Pakistan. It was very funny. But what is behind it? The two countries are in very serious and very real need of each other. Pakistan is an atomic power in the eastern borders of Iran, and very effective, very impactful on Afghanistan, its northern ally, and in a country which has very serious, actually, border conflicts with Pakistan. Afghanistan, despite it's much weaker and has been engaged with wars for decades, has territorial claims over a big part of Pakistan. And Pakistan, at the same time, has a huge foe, India, which has enough capacity to destroy the whole country. So Pakistan needs to be, at least not in a not in an enmity with Iran, because they consider Iran as the sole border which can bring peace for them. At the same time, Pakistan does not have enough control over a big part of its territory, which is in practice controlled by the Pashtun Islamist groups called the Pakistan Taliban. So and we know that Pakistan has a lot of energy deficit. They need energy resources. They're spending a lot of money on LNG, which is actually deaccelerating their economic growth. And Iran has a contract with Pakistan, which was not fulfilled with the Pakistani side. And if Iran takes Pakistan to the court, according to the claims of the Iranian Ministry of Petroleum, Pakistan will have to pay $18 billion of penalty to Iran for not taking the gas, because the contract is take or pay. So as you see, the two countries have a lot of issues. Pakistan is dragging itself into the conflict in Caucasus.
I mean, even if the money could be found, it seems the U.S. State Department would do all it could to block a gas pipeline from Iran to Pakistan.
Sure, they will. And I think Pakistanis are not honest in this case. They're just trying to stop Iranians taking the issue to a court, because they both know that even if Pakistanis build the pipeline in the Pakistani side, in at least 4 months of the year, Iran will not be able to supply gas to Pakistan. They have gas deficit in the winter and sometimes in the summer. So you see that I think this is a sort of peacemaking between the two countries and not a real gas deal, revival of the gas deal.
Right.
But at the same time, the volume of Iranian-Pakistani trade, non-oil trade, has increased very significantly during the last year. It was doubled in 1 year, and they're planning to make it 5 times more. So there are developments in the Iranian-Pakistani relations, and that is real. Iran is exporting LPG to Pakistan as a barter deal in return for agricultural products. But I don't believe that Pakistanis have enough funds to build the pipeline. And if they have some, Iranians will lack enough gas to export. But the main problem is, okay, what are you going to do with the $18 billion of penalty? Are you going to forget about it?
I suppose
or are you going to get it somehow?
That will linger there as a stick and a carrot for everybody. Max, looking at events in Latin America this week, also we had the decision by the U.S. government to not extend the sanctions relief on Venezuela. We were sort of looking that LATAM might deliver some new oil supply this year, and one of those pieces would be Venezuela. What do you think is the impact of this decision of the U.S.? Will it be another one of the empty threats of sanctions?
Indeed, Sean. This week we saw the restatement of the sanctions, the GL 44. Going back, into full swing. There is a transition period. It's about 30 days. The sanctions will be in force, full swing in end of May. So basically, the indications from the U.S. is, for all the U.S. companies, U.S. persons to what they call wind down, essentially, transition into something that is going to be full stop, by the end of May. So that's the indication that we have now here in Venezuela. Nevertheless, we've seen since October, October they lift the sanctions. We have seen here new influx of companies, new investors, old investors, like Repsol, signing new, what they call empresas mixtas or joint ventures here, and new companies, coming in.
And can they take those forward now, even though the sanctions are coming back, or how does that impact them?
Well, the indications, from the State Department, OFAC basically saying, come talk with us. We will discuss case by case. And we will issue licenses for each one of the companies, engaging in this contract. The fact is that new contracts have been signed in the last month or last weeks even. So probably we will see some of these companies getting licenses, from Washington, And
like Chevron
most
seemed to
likely,
be given a green light to continue.
yeah, Chevron has a special license which is called GL41. So they have their own treatment here. Everybody else is under GL44, but they have a different status here. But I agree, and you're right. Chevron has basically signed a new contract, and they are seeking new blocks. As a matter of fact, they're drilling. They're back to drilling in some of their licenses. So slowly Venezuela engaging in new activity, new contracts, new companies. There are some Brazilians, more on Trump, so there are some new players in the country, pushing back production. So my take is that some of this related again to the U.S. elections, and people here. There's elections here in July, so maybe we will see some changes, maybe not. But the air here is that we are in transition, and a different move here. So basically, we are seeing basically we are seeing in transition to something different.
Something
Most
different.
likely, production will increase.
Yeah, something different, but the same leadership, but maybe a different idea.
Yes,
let's go to the survey question. And with OPEC Plus looking at all of this, what are they going to do? What can they do? We had our weekly interview yesterday with Sarah Akbar, a CEO out of Kuwait, who's saying that OPEC Plus can't afford to put more oil on the market in the second half under current demand scenario. Do you agree with that or disagree? OPEC under these conditions, $90 oil, all of the macro and micro, it's more or less steady as she goes, no need to change. Agree or disagree? Time to sort of unwind those cuts. OPEC can't afford to put more oil on the market in H2 under current demand scenarios. Laurie, I'm not sure anymore. Speaking of useless leaders, Emmanuel Macron made a big speech yesterday. Apparently people showed up for it. I suppose they were students at Sorbonne, better than going to class maybe. But I just sort of, is Macron emerging in this moment of leadership vacuum in Europe as a contender? And I mean, he pronounced some pretty morbid outlook there that Europe could die, that there's just all of this big language and vision of doomsday, and that Europe really needs to stand up and be counted. Your thoughts on his speech and how it resonates into this current cycle?
So yesterday was a big, if you want, speech for Macron to rally. It's part of the rally and part of the elections that are coming soon, since the rise of the right left, the rise of the right, the far right, far left. So he is always like when he came to power, he was the center, and he sees that the groups like in Europe, the centrists, don't know like what to fight anymore, because the right left is today, plus adding to it the Palestine issue, going back to all the norm. They have a case. The right, the far right has a case with immigration and illegal immigration. Leading the way is Giorgia Meloni and Italy. So there is something that needs to be said, and he made the case for Europe, saying that we still believe in a unified Europe, a stronger Europe, and Europe is mortal. That is, I think, something that will be resonating with a lot of the believers in Europe, and still in a unified Europe. So he said, Europe is mortal. It is going to die if we don't take action on security first. And he has been saying this for a while now, that Europe needs to put more money into the military and have its independence, and stop depending on the US. Especially, everyone is foreseeing if Trump comes back, and he opens all this issue about NATO, defense, etc. So Europe is left on its own. And if he's going to do a deal with Russia, maybe, so Europe will be at the mercy of Russians, maybe. So they are overseeing all this. This is like now a threat, but he's talking about the future threat and more sustainable Europe.
Well, that future is only 6 months away if it happens. So that's
exactly.
I mean, you could barely even build a factory to make tanks in that time. I mean,
but they
Europe has left.
But they brought in the Nordic states, and from what I understand, these Nordic states that had come into NATO now, and so basically they will be supporting with very high-tech know-how in military. This is what I'm understanding with my discussions here and there. So, but again, and the other point is about this competition between competition and the competition for the future and for the future energy, and especially that energy transition. Now it feels that yes, Europe had pushed for it, but they see themselves screwed, squeezed between the US and China. China has the full supremacy over everything from EVs, PVs, batteries, and the critical minerals. And the US now is trying to catch up through the policies that it passed. So Europe feels as well where is the competition? And everyone here is talking about bringing back competition, bringing back the industry. So Europe is in a phase where you feel it's old ways, where they need the resources. Where are they going to get the resources? Is it they need to go back to Latin America? They need to go back to Africa, because this is something that he mentioned as well. He said that we need to forge stronger relations with Africa and Latin America. So that brought again these colonial ideas that Europe has needs, the resources are somewhere else, but how to get these resources?
Well, I saw an interesting article earlier this week in Bloomberg, I think, where they showed a photo of the French central bank vault that had, I think, something like 4,500 tons of gold for a country, gold bars, a country that has no gold mines, and the African countries that have all the gold mines, but they have no gold in their central bank. So hence your colonial challenge.
Yes. But just to say on that, he's trying to lead Europe, and
and it needs it, obviously.
There are two leaders today, you like it or not. One is Macron is trying to do that, and Giorgia Meloni is leading that far-right approach for Europe. So we'll see who's going to win at the end.
Well, some reason she does seem to have a moment in the sun. We'll see if she flies too close to the sun. Donald Tusk might come up on the inside and offer some leadership. Let's see. Daniel, I wanted to quickly get your comments before we wrap up. More sanctions on Iranian oil exports. Your thoughts on if that's going to have any impact? I suppose it's all about enforcement.
Actually, under the current geopolitical situation, war in Ukraine, war in Gaza, and chaos in the region, the sanctions are not going to work. It all depends on whether China is going to import more Iranian oil or not. I think the reason that Iran is not exporting more oil to China is just Iran's capacity of production. I think if even Venezuelan oil is sanctioned, again, Iranians will be able to buy Venezuelan oil in return for gas condensate and export more oil to China. I don't think sanctions would work on Iran. There would be some ways they can implement more sanctions, effective sanctions, but they have very little chance to work. I don't believe that there is any chance that the American sanctions at the current situation would work.
Max, last word to you. I just wanted to get a quick update. There's the result of the survey. 56% agree OPEC can't afford to cut in the current demand window. Outlook for Argentina 3 months into the new government of Javier Milei and his first sort of real austerity measures that he's been kicking in. Will he make any impact for that sort of untapped energy resources of Argentina?
My view here is that, he inherited a very difficult situation, very high inflation, 250,000 yearly inflation, in December, 30%, inflation rate monthly, very difficult, very high poverty, line. So basically he, inherited a very difficult situation. Nevertheless, he's been in these 3 months, he managed, to start lowering the inflation. The last inflation last month was about 10%. He's monthly, of course. He's talking about 8% monthly, the next month, May. So he is austerity measures, as you said, he's managing. I think he, in a very tight, difficult situation, he's managing. In that scenario, YPF has announced, YPF is the state oil company, has announced the selling of conventional assets. About 50 oil fields, what they call marginal fields, has been put on sale, and that's got a lot of attention. On the same hand, we are seeing increased production in Vaca Muerta. Some players like Vista Oil, which is a small independent, Argentinian company, seeing record productions, about 80,000, barrels per day. They are claiming that they will produce 80,000 barrels of oil per day. So basically, we are seeing some light at the end of the tunnel, in my view. Lower inflation, some good indications that the oil industry
So sort of
recover.
in a way, laying the groundwork perhaps to attract some foreign direct investment in due course, a more stable macro outlook. Well, we wrap it up there. Brent crude oil trading at 89, just shy of $89.50. It'd certainly be interesting to see if it can have a surge here at the end of the week and close above $90 a barrel, and see if that becomes the floor or the ceiling for the rest of the first quarter. $90 seems to be a place where the current market is comfortable settling after breaking out in the first quarter from that sort of more sort of tied to $80 a barrel. Now it looks like the consolidating number is 90. Will that be a ceiling or a floor? That's a question I'm asking, and we'll have to wait and see. Thank you so much. As always, great to have everybody on. Max Torres in Venezuela, Laurie Atayan in Belgium, and Daniel Rahmat in Iran. Great to have your insights today. Have a great weekend. And we will catch up with everybody next week, 10:30 UAE time, the Daily Energy Markets Podcast. All the best.
Thank you, Sean. Bye-bye.
Cheers, guys.
Thank you, Sean. Bye.
Thank you.